Hi, friends. As you know, usually I come on and talk about business or the law, but we're going live today again to talk about relationships, which we often do on the weekend. And so we're here to talk today about the role of spirituality in dating and relationships. And I'm joined by my lovely wife, Kathy, with whom I have a relationship. And we want to talk to you about the role of spirituality, not just in our relationship, but in general. Um, Kathy, would you like to lead out and get us started?
Well, we've talked about spirituality meaning different things to different people, and that there's a difference between that and religion, and that and belief systems. Spirituality is
Kind of your individual relationship with your Creator and how your spirit interacts with the world around you and the heavens and uh, God.
and religion is more of an institution, something that can assist you in that process.
And
And belief systems is something when I was dating, I explored a lot with my potential dating partners because belief systems are completely different than religion and spirituality. And we all think differently. I mean, even if we all subscribe to a similar religious belief or a doctrine, it doesn't mean that we all think the same.
yeah, there are certain things that we kind of believe are moral imperatives, and even in the same religion, by way of full disclosure, Kathy and I are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Uh, do we see every religious question the same way? We're pretty close, but not, probably not everything. But we know that there are members of the church that do not necessarily believe exactly as we do on every point. There are certain moral imperatives that they believe in that we don't, or that we believe in that they don't.
Or, even between us, we have different belief systems based on our own lives and our own experience. I don't think that God gives us all the same information all at the same time. We are all on a different path and learning and growing that way.
I think that one thing I appreciate about our relationship is we're both Latter-day Saints, but we have some similar ideas about. One thing is we believe in a religion that is more, or a spirituality, if you prefer, that is more oriented toward mercy, forgiveness, grace, love, and less toward judgment and fear.
And of course, in Scripture, you find all of that.
We also believe in it receiving truth, let it come from whence it may, as the prophet Joseph Smith said. So we take our primary sources of truth from our own religion and teachings, but we're open to receiving truth from other places too. And Kathy and I are very similar in embracing kind of those two concepts. Not everyone in our faith is comfortable with those things.
Well, I don't know if it's this way for you, but when I hear truth, it harmonizes with other truth. That's how I know it's truth for me, is when it makes sense with other truths I know.
Yeah, and I like to seek harmony between all truth. I look for the harmony oftentimes because I think it expands my understanding. And, Kathy and I, like I said, from the beginning have been compatible that way. We, like I said, we don't necessarily see every question the same, but we're basically on the same page, and we respect each other's individual journey as well. I think it would be harder, honestly, to be in a relationship with someone where you were very different in your spiritual and religious beliefs.
And even personal beliefs, any moral imperatives. We have one example. Jeff and I have, when we first met, had a different way of eating. At the time, I didn't have any allergies, and he had celiac for 12 years, and he, at the time, mentioned that he was gluten-free, and so we made accommodations for his eating, and he didn't really care what I ate, and so we got along just fine at the dinner table. But at one point I was dating someone who had a belief system around his food choices. And although I believe that vegetarianism can be a very healthy lifestyle for many people, I don't personally believe that it is the right choice for everyone. And I didn't know this at the time, but I was actually, my body was going through a process of developing some digestive disorders that have eliminated most foods that vegetarians eat for their health. And like it's so weird and strange to me that there's certain vegetables and fruits I can't eat, and a large portion of the alternative protein sources that I can't eat. And so meat is actually one of those things that I can eat safely for my body. And I'm really grateful that at the time I made the decision that I wanted to maintain my agency about what I put in my body, and that I was able to make those choices for myself. Now, if, and I have friends who are vegetarian that just, they just naturally eat that way. I know my sister prefers that way of eating, but we don't have any problem eating together because it's not a belief system. It's just a preference, or, a medical, based on medical need. And so just really, and this is just one subject, but there's so many subjects to explore when dating with people based on, is it a belief system or a really, really strong preference and incompatible, or is it something that can be accommodated, like where you squeeze the tube of toothpaste to just get two toothpastes?
When I was single, I sometimes heard, I was in a number of mid-single dating groups on Facebook and things, and I would hear men who weren't in the church talk about how bigoted Mormon women are because they don't want to date outside the faith. And I'd like to kind of add some perspective, because I understand the frustration and the feelings.
And I had been approached with that question, and it was a sincere one by people that I dated that maybe either weren't members or weren't active, or at least that I associated with and became friends with and got to know. And, it really came back to belief systems. Like, if the belief systems don't mesh, and it's a really important thing to a person, it's really difficult to have that other person not be believing and not be, as supportive as they would be if they believed themselves.
Yeah, we have a very deeply held belief, for example, that a marriage performed in one of our temples by priesthood authority is not just till death do us part, but forever. And we not only believe that that's an important thing to enter into the highest heaven, but we believe that that basically is what heaven is. It's a big eternal family. And if my partner can't sign up for the same version of heaven that I have, well, that's not going to work.
It's lonely.
And so it's not that a woman that's a Latter-day Saint looks down on a man who isn't, and that's the reason that she wouldn't date him. It's she wants to be with someone who can lay in bed at night and have pillow talks about how your family is going to continue on and on through the eternities, and you're going to be together. And that was important to me, finding Kathy, and frankly, for me, it would not be heaven without her. So, how do you get beyond that if that's your deeply held belief? And you don't need to apologize, I feel, for a deeply held belief. Just like the vegetarian that Kathy talked about, someone she dated, asking him to sit across the table and watch somebody eat a steak might be something like asking a nurse that's a devout Christian to help perform an abortion. It's such a deeply held belief that
you want a partner that can
you
share.
want a partner that can share in that and support you in it.
And one clarification I want to make is that although we believe in sealing power and families going on into the eternities, it's an ideal that we strive for, not one that we automatically just get when we go to the temple. Obviously, it has to be worked at a starting point. I mean, Jeff and I have actually been divorced before, and that's devastating to people who believe that marriage is forever. And
You kind of feel like you've lost your promise of heaven for a while.
well, and if you're single and never have been married, or you're divorced and you no longer have that, it can feel very disconcerting to be in our church culture. And we believe that Jeff and I personally have talked about this, that everyone will have the opportunity for the blessings that they want in the next life, regardless of what's happening here in mortality, which is very imperfect and full of people making choices that aren't always in harmony with what is in our highest good. And we have to work with it the best we can, and then we believe that it will all work out. We believe in a loving Heavenly Father that will answer the questions later that we just can't answer here.
Yeah, for sure. We believe God is merciful, and that He's going to give everybody a fair opportunity to accept His plan. What we want to convey, though, to anyone who feels like somebody's looking down on them because they won't date outside the faith, that's just a thing of wanting that secure feeling that you're on the same path, spiritual path with your partner, and that you're signed up for the same version of heaven. It doesn't mean you've made it. It means you're going toward that through the sacrifice of Christ.
And not just that, but what habits are you going to create in your home that support your spiritual well-being? That is more likely to happen when you're on the same road and you're facing in the same direction. And we believe that spiritual growth, personal growth, is all what makes you, or at least what makes us, like this is our own experience, better companions for each other. And it also leads us to living our highest life. It is for our highest good, and it can definitely guide us in decision making. And if you're dating, that's really important, is to have guidance in your decision making, because you don't always know the end from the beginning. We're definitely responsible for getting to know as much as we can about a person and make good choices according to that experience. But ultimately, it's really important to have extra guidance, and I wouldn't want life without that.
Yeah, I think in terms of your spiritual journey, there was a period of time after I got divorced where I was feeling very bitter and probably, like most divorcees, inclined to blame my former spouse for everything that happened. And if I wanted to get into a blame game, I could sit down and tell you all the things I thought she did wrong. But I looked inside myself a lot, ultimately, and decided, there were a few things about the way I showed up in my relationship that I would really like to do better another time.
Yeah, we actually were saying the other day that we, unfortunately, and not on purpose, shortchanged our first spouses because we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have life experience that we do now, and we're able to show up better for each other from the lessons that we've learned in the past. And we actually wanted to just leave with...
that is a function of spiritual growth.
Sure. And a word we love to use is intentional, because we believe that an intentional spirituality gives us a purposeful way of being, not just how we act and how we think, but how we live our lives, how we experience life itself, and how we show up for other people. So we just wanted to, what was the word?
Challenge?
Yeah, challenge. We wanted to just challenge everyone this week. It's Sunday, it's the beginning of a new week, and just challenge you to think about maybe one thing that you could do to edify yourself and show up more positively in the world to make your life better.
I think I would add to what Kathy's saying. Statistically, where we've each been married twice before, our
Statistics are bad.
our chances of getting divorced are 73%.
That's right, which means we have like about 0.25% chance of making it.
Yeah, 27% roughly chance of making it. And we discussed that a lot before we got married, believe it or not, and we've discussed it since. And the way we're determined to beat the odds is to be very intentional about how we show up for our relationship. And that means things as simple as when you feel like saying something really mean to the other person, bite your tongue, call time out, go for a walk, breathe, come back when you're calmer and ready to discuss something.
Well, and we're also
That doesn't come naturally.
Well, and we're responsible for our own feelings.
And
no matter what anyone else does, we're responsible for our own stuff.
That's for sure. And in like manner, we need to be intentional about our spirituality. And so with this challenge that Kathy just offered, I'm going to suggest, if you don't have a spiritual path, experiment, find something that speaks to you. Of course, we recommend our faith, but the important thing is to be on a spiritual path, and that will not only help you to be a happier person, it'll help you show up better in relationships, it'll help you live a more introspective life so that you're understanding the way your actions affect other people.
And for those of you who do have a faith that you subscribe to, there's always room for improvement because we're still human. So just think of one thing that you can do to make that part of your life better.
One final thought, we just started a new page on Facebook called Love in Later Years. Look it up, click like. There's a group associated with it that you can join and where we discuss things like this. We'd love to have you, especially if you're a mid-single adult and want to intentionally look for better ways to show up in love and relationships and work toward a lasting happiness with a partner. So we'd love to have you. If you'd like to join that, you are more than welcome.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for coming. We'll talk again soon.